Hello and welcome back to Alpha DevCon 2020. I'm here again with Selwyn Ravens, the president and co-founder of Alpha Software, as well as Dan Bricklin, our CTO. And we are now in the most highly anticipated, no stress here, guys, but the most highly anticipated session, which is our product roadmap. So over the next hour, we're going to go through the things that we're going to be adding to Alpha Anywhere and to Alpha Transform. We're going to begin with Alpha Anywhere and with Selwyn Ravens. Hello, Selwyn.
Hi, Dave. Can you hear me okay?
I can. You're coming through loud and clear.
Okay, good. So good morning, everybody, and thank you for attending. And I just want to start out by saying this is the presentation that also always makes me the most nervous, because I'm always nervous that there's going to be somebody in the audience who remembers what I said in the previous roadmap talk that I gave and is going to basically grade us on what we said we were going to do and what we actually did. But in actual fact, I did look back on the last roadmap, and I was very happy to see that many of the things that we said we were going to do, we actually did do. And we've got a roadmap here that is incredibly exciting also and very ambitious. So, you know, I am very much looking forward to sharing it with you, getting feedback on what you think of our plans, and possibly how you think we might want to reorder these plans. So let me start out by sharing my screen and showing my my PowerPoint. So let's go here and swap this over. So Dave, are my slides coming through?
Slides are coming through at full screen. Yep.
Okay. So what we're going to do in the roadmap talk today is break it down into various sections: server side, client side, Alpha Cloud, and Transform. And Dan will handle the Transform part. What I'm going to talk about in the presentation is sort of the overall theme that guides us as we decide what we're going to be doing in the product. And then I'll be demoing some of the stuff that's under development and talking about some of the other features that are also planned. So one of the key theme that is guiding us right now is making Alpha easier to learn and making the onboarding process for new developers more rapid. So one of the things that we've noticed is that a lot of the developers who we talk to run businesses. They run, you know, say service businesses or consulting businesses, and they do projects for their customers. And in order to take on more work, they need to have more Alpha developers. So they're hiring people, and they need to onboard those developers. And so in order to make Alpha easier to learn, we are going through the whole product and looking for ways in which we can simplify the user interfaces. We've also introduced the Community Edition, which is basically a free version of the Alpha IDE for building web applications that can be deployed to Alpha Cloud. So Alpha Cloud is becoming increasingly important to us as our preferred way for deploying Alpha Anywhere applications, and we're going to be doing a lot of work in making it easier and faster to deploy to Alpha Cloud. We're also very focused on ease of use. We want to make deployment even faster than it is right now. So, you know, getting to a sort of a one-button click to deploy to an Alpha Cloud, to your Alpha Cloud account, and then of course continued improved functionality across the board. On the server side, what's very important to us is the memory footprint of Alpha. So we're working to reduce the memory footprint. It's a lot of work. It's, you know, it's not something that shows up as an immediate end user feature or benefit, but to us internally, there's a huge gain in reducing our memory footprint. And parallel with that is making XBasic thread safe, which will result, we hope, in some significant performance improvements on the for the server. Remote debugging is something that we are working on and have made quite a bit of progress on. And this is the ability to debug a running application. So you should be able to debug the XBasic code in a running application more easily. Server-side JavaScript is something we've spoken about in the past, but we'd like to push that back higher on our roadmap. And that is the ability to, instead of using XBasic, to use JavaScript to handle your AJAX callbacks. On reporting, we've put a huge effort into removing our dependence on Amuni. So currently, those you might know that we are using the Amuni PDF printer driver for turning reports into PDFs in web applications. But we've had problems in the past with the Amuni driver. And in particular, the Amuni driver, since it's a printer driver, it does not lend itself to containerization, which is something that's important for us going forward. So we're very close to completing a huge effort on removing the dependence on Amuni for all reporting in the product. We are going to be working on the ability to build report designs using Microsoft Word mail merge templates, and that's going to give us report formats we currently support PDF and Excel, but it's also going to give us DocX, which is the Microsoft Word format for reports. On the client side, we're going to be basically introducing our own JavaScript charting library, and I'm going to be doing a demo of that, and then Dan will also be doing demos of that in how we're using our JavaScript charting in Transform. The calendar control is something that we've put a huge effort into as well, and as some of you may know, we have been shipping an integration with a third-party calendar called Web2Cal. But once the calendar control is released, we will no longer need to use Web2Cal for calendaring options. And we'll be doing a demo of where we are with the calendar control. So the calendar control is being implemented as another view in the list control. So in the previous session, we demoed how a list control can be a columnar, could be a map control, could be a Kanban control, could be a freeform control, but a list control could also be a calendar control. And the reason that we chose to implement the calendar as another view in the list is, of course, the data that you display in a calendar control, in fact, is something that you would get out of a list. And by doing it in a list control, you automatically get for free the ability to update data in the backend SQL database from which the calendar events are derived. You get offline support, you get all sorts of things that the list control currently gives you for free. We're going to be introducing new container types in the UX component, and we'll be giving demos of that. So the new container types are things like cards and card headers and card footers and card navigation. But the important thing about these new container types is the way we're implementing them is as a soft implementation. So it's based on a file, a folder on the hard drive where the definition of these new container types is stored. And the reason that we're doing it like that is that it's going to make it very easy to continue to release new container types, which enhance the types of applications that you can build very easily without having to sort of release new versions of the product. We're going to be showing a little later on in the demo section the form box control. And the form box is inspired by Transform. It's a very, very lightweight JSON form definition. And it's not that dissimilar from the form view control, which we introduced a couple of years ago, excepting that unlike the form view control, which required separate editors for all the controls, the form box behaves more like a regular form in that all of the editing is done in place. And then we're going to be releasing, although we already have released this in a pre-release, is collaboration tools that you can build into your UX components So we're building a control that is based on an open source control called Jitsi Meet, which is going to allow you to add collaboration features. So when I say collaboration features, you should think of products like Zoom. So imagine building a Zoom control directly into your UX components. So that's obviously very important as we continue to live in this environment, the COVID environment, where people are typically working at home and collaboration is becoming more and more important. On Alpha Cloud, a very important goal for us is scheduled tasks. So scheduled tasks are basically server-side code that runs on a particular schedule. So for example, you might say, I want to print these reports, these management reports every Monday morning at 9 o'clock and then send them out. Long-running tasks is another important issue. So typically in web applications, you want to click buttons that make AJAX callbacks that do things that can be done in a relatively short amount of time, because the client side is typically waiting until the server sends a response. And in fact, if you start a very long-running task, something that may take several minutes to complete, the client, which is i.e. the browser, will typically give up listening for the response, and so you end up with problems. So the ability to easily handle long-running tasks without having any performance degradation is high on our list of things that we want to get done for Alpha Cloud. We want to basically improve the rapid and scheduled scaling of server resources. So this is important because this is an example. This real-world example is we had one customer who has built an app where I think 10,000 people were logging in at 8 o'clock every morning, and then after that the usage became very light, and so they needed to have high capacity available at 8 o'clock for a short period of time, and then they needed to scale down. So the ability to schedule, say, additional servers at 8 o'clock for a short period of time is something that would be very helpful to this type of application. We mentioned earlier that we've introduced free SQL Cloud databases for development, but we'd also now like to move to production databases. We'd like to, right now, production databases for Alpha Cloud are typically Amazon RDS or SQL Server, Azure, etc. But we would like to host production databases in Alpha Cloud ourselves, even though internally we might build on top of RDS. And the reason that we want to do that is that you then end up with a one-stop shop environment. You don't have to go and set up a separate RDS account from your Alpha Cloud account. We've also noticed that as more and more people start moving to Alpha Cloud, one of the real challenges is getting their certificates and their DNS all set up correctly. And so we'd like to make it much easier to provision certificates, possibly even allow you to purchase certificates from Alpha directly and handle that. And then cloud debugging is something that I mentioned earlier, which is very important as more and more applications are hosted on Alpha Cloud. The ability to debug into your server-side code in Alpha Cloud becomes very important. Deployment speed. Right now, deploying an application to Alpha Cloud takes a couple of minutes. We'd like to try to get that to be even faster. And the reason that we're so focused on deployment speed is that we want to make sure that the hardest part of building your application is actually building the application and not deploying it. Deploying it should be a drop dead, no fuss operation, so that you can easily build and deploy applications very quickly. And that's really important in this sort of low code, COVID, post, COVID world, where applications need to be built and put, and deployed extremely quickly by less technical people who don't have strong DevOps backgrounds. We want to continue to bring down the cost of running Alpha Cloud applications. Alpha Cloud is going to evolve with changes in the technology landscape. And what I mean by that is that currently Alpha Cloud is built on a virtual machine type architecture, but the world has moved towards containers and Kubernetes and functions as a service, and Alpha Cloud is going to move along with that as well. So we're going to be working on deploying Alpha service in containers, which then should allow us to host Alpha Cloud on, right now, AWS, which is what we do, or Azure or Google Cloud Services, or probably or possibly even on in-house on-prem clouds as well. And then functions as a service is going to allow us to basically break the Alpha backend up into smaller microservices, so that you end up only paying for the actual compute resources that are used when your servers are actually running. So these are sort of the trends in server-side technology that are happening out there, and Alpha will work hard to evolve Alpha Cloud along with these technologies. So what I'd like to do now is actually go over to demo mode and look at some of these new features that I have spoken about. So Dave, is my screen being shared right now?
Yes, it is. I can see Alpha Anywhere.
Okay. So the first thing that I mentioned was that we're working on the ability to do charts directly from within Alpha. So I'm going to go quickly now to a list control here, and I'm going to run this list, and then you'll see what I'm talking about. So this list, here's a list control, and you can see that inside each list here, I've got a bunch of columns, but then I've got some charts. So these are, this is called in-row charting over here. So you can see that I've got a gauge chart over here that's displaying a value. So it's displaying this value times 100. So that's 39.4. It's displaying, you can see this is 10.46, actually times 10. So as I scroll down, I see that value displayed as a chart control. And in this particular case, you can see the chart control has a conditional color. So if the value is less than a certain amount, we display it in red. Otherwise, we display it in green. Then the next inline chart that I have over here is a line chart with some shading underneath the chart, and then I have a pie chart. So these in-row charts are done by just going into the list control over there. You can see that I've got some static data over here, which I'm using to display in my list. And then in the field section, when I say add item, you can see that we have over here a new item called a chart. So this is going to be an in-row chart. And then I've got 3 charts over there. So if I bring up the builder for the chart, so chart 2 is being displayed as a line chart. Chart 3 over here is being displayed as pie chart. And then chart 4 is being displayed here as a gauge chart. And then for each one of the charts, you can go and set properties. So you can see here for this first chart, the line chart, we've said that the data points are coming from data in the current row from point 1, point 2, and point 3. So those are some of the columns in the current row. And then you can see we have additional properties over there. If we go to, say, this chart, which is our gauge, again, we've got our data point, which was just basically the first field times 10. And then I've got some additional properties. I've said that the color is basically based on this JavaScript little snippet of code. So if the value is less than 20, we use this color. If it's above 20 but less than 50, we use this color. And you can see that we're specifying 2 colors because we've chosen a gradient color, which means that we start at this color and then we transition gradually to the second color over there. So those are some of the chart controls. These are the in-row chart, but charts will also be a layout type. So I can also go to a layout and say that it's a chart layout, which means that instead of seeing rows and columns, I'll see a single chart for all of the list data. So the types of charts that we are going to be supporting can be seen over here in our chart picker. So this is a control that shows all of the various charts that we are supporting in Alpha. So you can see as I go through the charts, you can see the various charts. But the key point about the charts, the Alpha charts, is that they are all based on JSON definitions. So you can see over here, what we're seeing is that this chart, here is the JSON data that represents the chart. So that, and then here is the final piece of JavaScript that is running to actually generate the chart. So this is a new function in the Alpha JavaScript library, and it takes 2 inputs. It takes data, which is, you can see over here, it has the data for the chart, and then it takes also settings, which is this JSON object over here, which represents the chart definition. So the reason that we're so excited about these Alpha charts is, first of all, they're blazingly fast, and secondly, they're incredibly powerful and very, very customizable, because all you need to do is modify this JSON object over here, which you can do easily in JavaScript, and then you can regenerate the chart. And when you call this function, it generates some HTML, or actually some SVG, which you can then put anywhere on your UX component. So this is a, let's continue there. So this is our stack chart, bubble chart, multi-line chart. This type of chart here is more suitable for an in-row list type of chart, because it's a very tiny chart. There's a mini bar chart, another mini bar chart over there. Stack percentages, again, also suitable for a list controls inline. You can see these are all tiny charts. So here's a gauge. That's a simple gauge. And then we have a more complex gauge over here. And you can see that every time the data that we are displaying up here in this gauge is random. You can see it's just basically a random value. And every time I redraw it, you can see it displays in a different color depending on the value of the gauge. So here's a chart that's actually displaying 2 different types of charts together. It's a line chart on top of a bar chart, and again, it's all defined through JSON. And of course, while this JSON might look a little intimidating right now, there will be builders that help you build the JSON. But of course, being able to get to the raw JSON and just change the format of the chart is very powerful. There's a polar chart, a donut chart, a pie chart with callouts, etc. And I should also mention that for those of you who have used Microsoft Code, which has become a very popular editor, you'll notice that this is Microsoft Code embedded into Alpha. And so one of the things on our roadmap is replacing the current XBasic and JavaScript editors that are ubiquitous in the UX Builder and the Grid Builder with Microsoft Code, so with embedded Microsoft Code. So you can see here that we have really nice JSON editing here because we're using Microsoft Code. So that's the that is the where we're going with charting. But in the same way that we have this chart picker, we also are going to have the calendar picker, because like the chart, calendars are also based on a JSON definition. So here you can see we've got, there will of course be many more choices over here, but here is a basic calendar. And again, this calendar is defined just like charting with a JSON object that defines the calendar. And then finally, at the very end, an alpha function which generates the calendar from the settings. So this is just a simple calendar. Here's a calendar that is displaying events, and you can see that as I put my mouse over each event, I get to see details about the event. Here's another calendar. So this is still, again, just a calendar. However, it looks totally different. This calendar is a heat map. So what this calendar is doing is we're generating some random data. And then for each day, so this is January, you can see we display, if you put your mouse over it, you can see we see that there were 5 orders on that day, and then 6 orders there, and then 4 orders there. So the color of the square is based on the number of orders. So this is called the heat map. And again, this is just a different calendar view. And then here's another calendar view called a timeline calendar. So you can see that basically we have different days across there. So here's the events being shown in a timeline, and then the selected day, we show the events in more detail. So this calendar picker will be used inside the list builder when you are defining a calendar view of your list data. Let's just go quickly and take a look at a component that we have here. So let's go back over there. And I think that I can, here's an example of a UX component that has, you can see a scrollable timeline across the top. And when I click on any particular day, I get to see the details for that day over there. So again, this is just another view of the calendar control. So the calendar control is an incredibly flexible control, and it's going to basically be presented as an alternate way of viewing data in a list. So here are some more examples, so you can see over here. So this is the calendar control displayed in what's called month view. So I can basically go to any event, highlight it, and move it to a different day. That was month view. Then we have week view. So here's the same data being displayed in week view, but because this is a list control, I can just go back to the default view, which is the actual data that is in the list. So you can see here we've just got some random data that represent the events in the calendar. So that was our week view, and then we have our day view where we look at basically events one day at a time. I can just go here and add a new event by dragging over there, and then of course there are events that fire when all of this happens. So you can hook in your own code. And then here's my timeline view as well. So basically this is the events shown along a timeline. So the calendar, of course, is as I mentioned, is a major development effort that we're getting close to ending right now. The calendar is actually in the pre-release nightly builds that we put out, but it's behind a feature key. So if you want to get access to the calendar control, the pre-release notes describe how you can send a request to Alpha to get the feature key to turn on the calendar. But it's still not complete. There's still more work going on, etc. But you'll see that you can see why we're so excited about the calendar control, because it is highly configurable and is completely mobile supported, in the sense that it supports everything can be done with touch events, etc. So getting back to some of the things that I mentioned that I would be doing demos of, let's go over here to let's go to client side. So I've shown JavaScript charting, I've shown calendar control. Let's now talk about new container types. So I'm going to go here and demo, let's go here and demo a flip container. So I'll just quickly go here and demo it. So you can see that I've got some containers here. So I've got a flip container, and then inside this I've got two containers, one called front and one called back. And inside the back container I've got a list control, I've got a header, and I've got a footer. So let's go ahead and run this right now. So you can see there's my header in pink, my footer in green, there's my body. And then if I flip it, I get basically the header, the footer, and then there's the list body shown over there. So this is an example of a new container type. So the container type here, over here, is a card navigator, and then inside the card navigator we have two cards, one for the front and one for the back. Both cards have card headers and card footers over there. So that's going to be, so these new container types will be coming soon. That's another example of a container type again. So this is the outer container here is our card navigator, and then this here is a card 1, and then this there is card 2. Card 2 contains a list control on it, so we'll go here. So there's our card 1. We click the button, and then we navigate to card 2 and then go back. And the reason that we decided to do this type of control is we were inspired by, say, the Gmail application. So you'll notice that if you use Gmail, every once in a while Gmail asks you to log in again, to refresh your login. And the way that it's done is you type in your email address and then you press enter, and then it transitions by sliding in the next card where you enter your password. So this is going to allow you to create these sort of very nice looking user interfaces really easily within Alpha. The next thing that I mentioned was the form box control, which is designed to be this really lightweight form control, which is really inspired by the way Transform works. So in Transform, the form definition in Transform is just all JSON data, and you can create these very, very rich controls or very, very rich forms very easily in Transform. So let's go take a look here at a form box control over here. So what you can see in this particular case is a UX component that looks very, very light. So there's a list control with some data, and then we have our form box. So I'm going to go ahead now and run it. So if I tap on a row here, we're now editing the data in that list row using the form box. So you can see that the form box has input controls over there. Then it's some of the controls are drop downs. This control here is a button list. Then we scroll down and we've got address, which is an expanding section. Then we go to phone fax, which again is an expanding section. And then I can just go ahead and hit save, and then we've saved the data back to the list. So that would be one example. Let's bring up another example over here. So I'm going to go back to so here's another example basically. So in this particular case, we've got some JSON data, and we're going to generate a form on the fly from this JSON data. So I'm going to go here and say generate form. So now here we go. I can go here and type in Fred and then say show data. So now we've captured the data there. You can see the data that's captured in this form is Fred Raven. So in this case, this is very simple, a very simple example. So let's go here and take a more complex example. So in this case, the JSON now has one-to-many relationships. So you can see that the person has children, and there's a one-to-many array there to children. So here's the form that is generated. You can see we're using a switch over there. For work, we've got a collapsible section. And then for children, we've basically got a data group, or what we used to call a repeating section. So you can see this is a much more complex form. And if we say show the form definition, here is the form definition. That's all just in JSON that has been automatically derived from this control over there. Basically, the other thing that's really nice about forms is the ability to support custom controls. So if I go back to my form over here, let's go back to the control panel and look at this custom control. You can see here that we've defined a custom control called a customer group. And then if I run this form now, you'll see that this is a built-in control. So this is the button list control. But then underneath this, I have the same data being displayed in a custom control. So my custom control, you can see, operates like this. I mean, I'm not quite sure what use case there would be for a custom control like this, but you could obviously write custom controls of your own at any point in time. So these are, I think those are the demos that I wanted to show. Let me just see if I can see any other demos that I prepared here. I did in-row charts, I did calendars, I've done containers and headers, I've done calendar, timeline, etc. So what I'd like to do now is hand it over to Dan, who's going to talk about some of the planned features for Transform. Just finally, before I do that, I want to just mention that I did say that the form box was something that provides a very, very lightweight way of designing forms. And I want to mention that we're actually already using the form box in Transform. So if you go to Transform Central, you'll see that there's an option here called user preference, and then another option for account settings. And these settings over here are basically done using a form box, because behind the scenes, you're just editing some JSON data. But editing JSON data doesn't present a nice user interface, whereas editing that same data in a form box presents a much nicer user interface. But the actual code to write this form box is trivial, and you can create these incredibly elaborate forms with hundreds or possibly even thousands of controls in a very lightweight fashion, whereas building those UX components with individual controls would be challenging. So Dave, let's hand it over to Dan now to do the Transform section.
That sounds good. Thank you very much. All right, Dan, I'm making you the presenter. You should see a dialog box on your screen.
Okay, and let's start with, where were we? Just check it has what I want on it. Yes. Show my screen. PowerPoint slideshow. Good.
And there we go.
Okay, and you see Transform Roadmap.
I do.
And let me get rid of, well, leave me up for a little bit. So the roadmap is that we're going to be putting more workflow built in. I'm not going to show you much of that. That's coming in the on submit and stuff of that sort. We're going to be upgrading the editors with more edit in place. We've done a lot of work on that, but that first was being used in some of the stuff that Selwyn showed. The work that was done in Transform was input to the tools that we use within, that are going to be standard within Alpha Anywhere, and you're seeing it come into the edit in place that Alpha Anywhere has, and then as that gets fleshed out, we'll be using that in Transform. There are internal changes that have been worked on and will be rolled out, such as switching to WK WebView to be able to do what Apple needs us to do, etc., and to take advantage of a faster runtime available on iOS devices. But the thing that I'm excited about that's coming about probably sooner than a lot of the others is the dashboard. And the dashboard comes from a lot of input from customers and potential customers, and just at our own use of it, etc. This replaces the home screen in Transform Central, because right now the home screen really is a preferences screen and a control screen and all, but it's not something a normal department person would want to get to, or something that you get to on a daily basis. What the dashboard is the dashboard has custom reports, and the reports are basically a single page, like a web page, and they're made up of multiple items. And we hope to have this later this year, and we're going to be going into beta pretty shortly. Let's see, next slide. There we go. So a report is the single page. It displays information about a retrieved list of form instances. In other words, it's like a SQL query, like you can do with the API, to be able to look at all of the forms for a particular account and get a subset of those downloaded to your browser. The query of the server is customized, and you can do filtering that's based on metadata, like the form type, the date created, the user fields, etc. That allows it to be pretty fast, and you get this data. You'll get one or more report per user. You can have multiple reports. It's like separate pages, and you can show one and then show another. So you could have one for your daily look, and you can have another one for your weekly look, and another one for when you're, in HR, etc., or whatever. And there'll be one or more shared per account, so that the account administrators can create ones that are used by everybody else. So you have your own, and you have the shared ones, and they're easily customizable on the fly, either temporarily or to be saved back. Each page displays data in one or more custom tiles, which we're calling items. So an item is a list, a graph, a block of text that shows some data. And this is common on all sorts of dashboards. That's why we've made it this way. And each of the items takes that data that the report retrieved from the database, and does additional sorting, filtering, and grouping just for that particular instance. So you can have different so different items can show different subsets of the data that you've downloaded. The filtering can be based on both the metadata, such as the date time created, and the form type, and who the person is, as well as the JSON within the form. You can select built on common cases, where you'll choose from drop down which particular type of filtering you want to do, or you can type in SQL-like conditions for custom cases that are a little more that are not that we've come up with in our common cases. And you can also use optional TPL code for the more complex cases. This means that you can do very complex filtering, sorting, and grouping. You can call even functions, TPL functions that you write or that are written for the account, so you don't have to do them over and over again. It's pretty powerful. The display is the data that you see is based on both the metadata and the form JSON data. And you can select from built-in common cases, and there are optional templates, the TPL templates or TPL code for the more complex cases, so you can massage the data, etc., and different builders for that. So let me change what I'm sharing. Let's see, how do I do this? Show an application to screen. let us show, I think this is the one. There we go.
Yeah.
And, okay, I guess let me get rid of me. You don't need me for this, right? Okay, so this is the management console. Excuse me, the management console that you've seen before. What we're, and this may actually completely go away with the dashboard, as we're putting a lot of what's in the management console into the dashboard. But what we've done is upgraded the dashboard, the management console, to now, in addition to showing just the data in this simple form, we also actually show the form view, so you can actually see what the form actually looks like in a way that's the way it was designed. And when you export it, you'll be able to export it as PDF using this new PDF converter that Selwyn talked about, and take advantage. This now uses the layout, so you can do multiple. If you set it up for multiple columns, you get that. So this gives us much better output, customizable output in different ways. The dashboard, here's an example of dashboard. So here we're looking at the filter of the report. You can have, custom, and you can choose the different custom type, but I'm using a predefined. There's the custom. You can say, which field, and what are the specific, choose a specific form type. So here's a list of all my form types dynamically, or I could say, between this and starts with this or whatever. And then you can actually then do the query of the database. And this gives us, in this case, 29 retrieved fields. You can add additional filter criteria, etc. And then you can save this away. So this is for downloading the data. Now that the data is here, what we see here is a scrolling list with sort of a template. In here, it says that this is number one. It was created on that date. It has 7 photos, and the person says they were born in Pennsylvania, etc. And this is for those. Here, 13 forms with that have the place born, that actually have a place when born, 45% of them. Here's a pie chart. Here's the same data as a donut chart. Here's the number of photos for different forms. The first form, form 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. We can fix that to be 1+. I can show you that. This just to show you the type of graphing you can do. So for example, if I look at this, I see that I can change the width. I can make it wider. I can make it narrower. I can make it higher, etc. I can make it start in a new row. There's the template. I can change the template to look like I want with the different sorting that I have, etc. I can watch the preview, yes or no. You can, depending on what you want to see the preview. I can take that form. Let's move that form over here. So you see how you can get this set up in different ways. If I want to be able to, let's say, just take this and make a copy of it. Here's a copy of it, and I could, change it into a pie chart. There's a pie chart, etc. You get the idea of what I can do. And this is the place born, is the value, and if I wanted to say place born, exclamation mark here, then now they all have an exclamation mark after them, because that's the value that I'm graphing. If you look at something a little more extensive, this is just sort of thrown together to be of interest, but it's done by taking the row index. There's the graph. Let's make that +1 would be more interesting. And now it moves it up from here, etc. You can see how it's doing its thing. And it's taking the length of the photos, and it's doing even odd for this, and it puts that up. and this is what the graph of the y-axis, and this is what the background color is, and you can make this an if in the template, so you could make the background a different color depending on what you want, etc. So, and you'll be able to choose all sorts of different ones, and you can save them and load them. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it back over to, let's stop showing and turn it back over to Dave.
Fantastic. That is very impressive, Dan. Very, very cool. Thank you. So we do have some questions, and if people have other questions, go ahead and type them into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. We have about 10 minutes or so. So let's start up at the top. We've got someone's, I guess, first for Selwyn. So one is production database features. Are we thinking about doing that? And if so, how soon might that be on our timeline? The ability to instead of just having test databases, when you do cloud, to have production databases available as a service. Uh-oh, I think you're muted at this point. Sorry, you need to come off of mute.
Okay, how about
There
that?
you go. Yeah, that's much better. Yeah.
So production databases is, I would say it's not imminent. And the reason that it's not imminent is that it's not really a road blocking item for many people right now. Amazon RDS is really good. We use Amazon RDS as the backend for Transform. We've got a lot of documentation and experience on using Amazon RDS, and it works really well. So there's no roadblock right now in terms of production databases. The reason that we would like to host production databases ourselves is just to give our users sort of a one-stop shopping, so that they don't have to go and set up a separate Amazon RDS account and a separate Alpha Cloud account. They can just do it all from within Alpha Cloud, and then we will manage the integration of RDS in an even more seamless way than we currently do it.
Great, terrific. The next have to do with charting, which we have a lot of comments. In fact, we have a lot of the same comments from lots of people, besides saying that it's super cool. A couple people asked, are these charts, and I think I already know the answer, but are these charts clickable? In other words, can I drill down when I see a chart and see what the data is underneath it?
The answer is yes. Basically, it all depends on how we choose to expose the functionality. But that you can basically, the charts are built on top of standard Alpha Anywhere JavaScript libraries, which means that a chart element can be an item, and like as we've shown in the viewbox control and the list view control, the A5-item element that you can add into your markup is a very powerful way of exposing event handlers.
Excellent. We have at least a handful of people asking about whether or not we plan to support Gantt charts. The format that you showed for the calendar control was somewhat similar, but a proper Gantt chart would be, it looks like, of high interest for people who are doing special project planning and things like that. Those sorts of applications.
That's a really good question. So obviously a Gantt chart would be an ideal alternate view of list data. So just like the list data can be columnar, Kanban, freeform, map, calendar, etc., it would be ideal if we could actually also add Gantt as one of the views. And we are looking into that option. We've been in discussion with an Alpha developer who has actually built a pretty elaborate Gantt chart feature in the UX component, and we are in discussion with this developer about licensing their work.
And I mean, one of the things is that the display, the draw function for the graphing and for the charting is JavaScript that can be replaced and or added to your heart's content and customized as we want. So there's all sorts of things. And it's just which things we provide in our library standard. So there's all sorts of capabilities. That's the way these, both the graphing and the calendar, they were developed, in tandem, learning from each other to make it very built on customizable blocks and stuff. So with a lot of helper functions, so it's easier to do that.
Terrific. And actually, while we are talking to you, Dan, the question, I've got a transform question, which is, can the new dashboard be configured so that it's the only view that specific users get to see? In other words, might we set up the permissions that way?
It's not for me as much as for Selwyn. As I'm not mistaken, the user permissions in the roles already control which things you can see in the in Central. So we should be able to do that. I mean, obviously, you can't. Well, you may be able to see setting the screen where you could set add new users. You can't get to those. Those disappear. Some of those already. So
Right.
more and more will be there on that. And by the way, the stuff that I showed with the dashboard is making use. All that stuff is making use of the form box.
Oh, very cool. Thanks.
So as the form box gets more capable, I'll be able to do a lot more in terms of the builder that you use for building your items.
Nice. All right. So there's a lot of excitement in the form boxes, and people are asking the inevitable question is, what is the timeline for form boxes? Is that sooner or is that later?
Basically there is some form box code that's already in the product, but it's not really accessible because it's not documented. Obviously it's there because we're using it in Transform and Dan is using it in dashboards. But in terms of providing builders and all of the sort of the infrastructure that goes around adding a new control, there's still quite a bit of work that we have to do. So I don't see form boxes being officially released until
there's something else about it. I mean, there's something else about it, which is that as we use it, we're getting feedback and we're crafting it. And we like to, when we release it, we don't want to have flag days where you have to change your code. We're willing to do that, but we can't do that. So we're still in the midst of some of that. In the case of the calendar and the graphing, we've been using it enough, especially the graphing and all, that we're locking more and more down that we can start making some of that, releasing that. We've already started, I think, on a little bit of documentation for the graphing, which I'm using, and but for the form box, just the same thing though. If you're desperate, for some of the stuff, some early people, with whatever, who can tolerate. And has been shown to be able to tolerate the fact that we change. We obviously use alpha testers and then beta testers to be able to make use of stuff.
So Dave, one of the things that I didn't mention when I was discussing the form box is the reason that we're so excited about the form box is because you can create these incredibly complex and rich forms with very, very lightweight JSON definitions. But because of that, it lends itself to browser-based builders and browser-based visual builders for form box controls, which means that ultimately what we expect to be able to do is have people build UX components that are intended to be run on Alpha Cloud in Alpha Cloud. So you won't need to have an IDE installed on your Windows box. You'll be able to go straight to your browser and build forms directly in your Alpha Cloud environment. So a totally browser-based experience for building UX components that have the form box in them.
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, the form box also, we're spending a lot, we're doing a lot that's enhancing browser-based things on laptops, which, surprise, surprise, in the last 6 months, we've gone from, oh, everybody has to have a little this or a little that, we do everything on the phone, to even all your children are given by your school, they're given a laptop,
Sure.
at least a Chromebook. Kindergartners are using, have gone, that people now, and you're seeing it in the sales, that suddenly it's no longer one per family, it's now one laptop per person,
Right.
which is a big change. So this is fortuitous in terms of the work that we're doing on that. And even then, the browser on, I mean, if you look at the tablets, what's happened to the iPad? It now uses a mouse. I mean, not only do you have a pen, you can actually use,
Yeah.
you know, a wireless
device.
mouse
Yeah.
with it.
Pointing device. Yeah, really cool. Excellent. Hey, thank you very much, both of you. We have come to the end of our hour and we have only gone through maybe a quarter of the questions. Lots and lots of
Oh.
interest in this. Don't worry, we have a Q&A development panel coming up today. I believe it's at 2:15. Until then, thank you very much, Dan. Thank you very much, Selwyn. Thanks for all of you who hung out and asked questions. Our next session is going to be at 1 o'clock, and I believe it's going to be a developers showcase. You could take a look at what some other users have done with Alpha Anywhere. Thanks very much. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.